been experiencing a lot of synchronicities, which I told you about, but I've also been experiencing deja vu and weird feelings of being in a place that I have never been in before, but I've been there, I feel like, and time isn't, I'm experiencing time now as non-linear. Like spiraling nature of the labyrinth and the kind of geometry in there seems to speak to that. And it's just like time is much more pliable and something we can do something with as opposed to something that does something to us.
I think our old conception of circular time, that you almost perceive the year as a circle, is kind of incorrect, because as the Earth is moving around the sun is actually traveling around the center of the galaxy. And so you have this, you don't ever come back to the same point that you were at. You've actually moved, thousands and thousands, if not millions of miles with each passing year. The labyrinth itself has different numbers or patterns found within the year. There's like a 13-pointed star for the 13 moons or months, which is where granted we have 12 months now, but there's 13 full moons in a year. You have these kind of underlying patterns and structures to space and time, and I think that you can explore those through geometry. You could explore those through, really I've enjoyed studying what's called the quadrivium, and it breaks down number into like an easy to understand way to learn.
It's wild because the 13 moons and the idea of our calendar being kind of incorrect, if you will, with like out of sync with universal time is something I read about in Jose Arguelles's books, and he actually recommends us changing our calendars as a way of making that first big step into being more in sync with time.
Yeah, I've followed some of his work. When I was in school, actually, a project I was working on was trying to create a better calendar. I think he definitely took it to a pretty interesting place. My hope was to simplify it just to where you have these basic patterns occurring, that there's day and night, so you get the number 2, you have the 4 seasons, and you could use the solstices and equinox as kind of like an anchor point. Where I kind of ran into trouble of wanting to create this perfect calendar is that, if you have Jupiter over here and the Earth is passing by it slows Earth down a little bit. Whereas if all the planets are on the opposite side, there's less gravity kind of.
I didn't know that Jupiter actually slows the Earth down.
Well, Jupiter,
its pull.
All of the planets, and I guess the closest ones have the greatest effect. So no year is ever really the same amount of time. But that, I think, is something to recognize and understand about the year, is that it isn't perfect. It didn't, that's why we have to have leap years and things like that.
Right. He had that day out of time each year to like kind of catch itself up.
Yeah, it would be nice. Everything would be nice and neat if it was just 360 perfect. Like it would be very easy to divide.
Right.
And,
that's kind of like what you were saying about the shapes and actually how they happen, the geometry, and it's a little bit off to allow for that. So you have so much knowledge about all of this stuff. Like, how did you get into it?
I'm not sure there was ever like a direct starting point, I've always been interested in art, and one of my favorite books is by Manly P. Hall, and it's called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. More well-known artists or authors like Joseph Campbell begin to kind of explore how symbols are used across different cultures. And then, of course, Carl Jung's work. And although, he's credited with synchronicity, I feel like that was kind of just a side thing to his overall research, that he really dealt with how symbols and symbols occurring in art. It's interesting when you kind of take it from the reading about this type of stuff into an experiential practice, and then you find, I've been using these symbols in different ways. So, I work as an artist and designer now, so I've kind of been able to blend this type of knowledge into what I do. I've had a strong interest in things relating to the mind and psychology, more on the kind of Jungian side, then tracing that line back through alchemy and kind of the mystery traditions. I try to keep it grounded in logic and stuff, but I think there's something logical and very fascinating about the artwork that's been done by groups of people kind of exploring imaginary realms. You kind of begin to see the structure or framework or mapping to it. So in my personal practice, I really find that through the labor and through the work of sitting down and kind of going through stuff step by step, that it's really an exploration. To me, that's my vehicle for exploring these imaginary realms and exploring the psyche and exploring life, because I think there are realms within us, there's worlds within our minds, but it really, to me, a disciplined, methodical, also open and creative, and creating a framework to then do this disciplined study within is really my vehicle that I found to explore that type of stuff.
It keeps you safer, right? And saner, maybe. You can go further.
A metaphor I've heard that we all have a spark inside us, but sometimes it's buried under a lot of stuff, and that really our job oftentimes is to just dig, and through that process of digging and digging and digging, and sometimes it isn't going to be overnight, it's going to be years or perhaps even someone's whole life before they really get to that divine spark within them,
That makes sense to me, because it feels like I'm being set up for a longer journey. I've already been on one, and like for me, it's a lot of synchronicities that seem to be compelling me. Is that still like something you feel, or?
To some extent, I've almost become like disenchanted with the idea of synchronicity. I think there's on one level, there's a illogical aspect to it, of that you think about 100 things during the day, but those 100 things don't happen outside of yourself. And we're in such like a media rich, and especially when you're traveling and in somewhere new, you're going to have more of the random factor, to where you're thinking about stuff all through the day, and at one point during the day, what you're thinking and what's happening outside of yourself, they synchronize. On the more mystical level, I think everything, to me, everything's synchronized. I think everything is connected, and we all have a common ancestry, be it as humans or as being as made of the same,
star stuff.
That we have the commonality, and so to think that everything isn't connected, sometimes misses the point. So I think overall, there is something positive to synchronicity, that it helps people kind of see that connection. I almost think you get like a little kick of dopamine or something when you're like, oh, that felt good, that connected, and it's exciting. So then you can start to seek that out, and you can start to look for that, and it could be distracting, on some level.
For me, it's still like opening up this idea, some of the ideas that you're talking about, of this underlying order that I'm only now discovering, as opposed to just chaos, which is the other way I was living my life, where it was like there's science and logic, but just everything just kind of happens the way it's going to happen, and there's no essential order.